Welcome back to this part 2 of creating a loot system and loot tables. Let's just jump in and continue from where we ended last time. Before we continue with the video, if you like what I'm doing here on this channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a lot. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Here we have what we will be creating in this series. We have a loot system and we also have a loot table system that's working with the loot system. So this character here over here has some debug functionality. By pressing a key here I can spawn an item from the loot system. And if I press it, you can see in the top left I get a certain amount of items that are possible loot, and one of them is chosen as the actual loot. And each time I press, a different item will be chosen from this pool of items randomly. Now this pool is determined by gameplay tags using things like looting categories. So you have things like armor types like helms and chests and boots and swords and stuff like that. But it also takes into consideration rarities. So we have the ability to filter and match against things like if it's a common, rare, legendary, artifact item and stuff like that. In addition to being able to loot or drop and spawn an item from the looting table or from the loot system, by having a pool of items, we also have the ability to spawn items using a key. So on a different key on my keyboard here, I can spawn a specific item based on a key instead from this loot system, and it will always spawn it that way. So you have two different options, either spawning an item from a key or from a pool, depending on some criteria. In addition to that, we also have a loot table system, which this character is currently making use of. So in front of me, when I press a key here, this character will die. And he has an actor component on him that allows his death to spawn an item from his loot table. So he has 3 different items on him. He has the possibility to spawn a helm, a sword, or a shield in this case, although it's called a chest piece, I think. So yeah, pressing that button now, you can see he dies and he spawns a sword. And if we go and check what that looks like, his character here has the component here, and here we have defined what his loot table looks like. So this is what we will be going through and creating in this series. So now we have the base of sort of a basic looting system, which we will be building upon a little bit further to see how we can scale this even more. But we will also be adding the possibility of having loot tables. Loot tables being a specific character is able to drop a specific assortment of items. So instead of having it completely random, you can say these are the items it's able to drop, and it will be handling only those items. So let's get started with that. To have this working, we need to have, first of all, another character. So we'll create another character, like so. We drag him off, and this will be our other character. We want to go into his details and type in possess here, or pos. Make sure that it's not going to be auto-possessed, so we put that to disabled. Save it and play, and we make sure that we're still this character. And the other character there will technically be handled by an AI, but it doesn't really matter for this. Crossing out the X over here now, we type in instead tag, and we go to our actor tags and we add one. We type in NPC with all caps, and this will be so we can say that this is an NPC character. This is so we can make a distinction between him and us later on. So that's what we will be doing for now, and that is done. The reason we created this now is because we want to be able to kill this character off easily. And we want to have the loot table go into effect. So let's start off with putting in our kill command essentially. So we'll create a new event. I'll create the keyboard event for R, like so. And this won't be fancy or effective, but this is just to show the functionality, not to be efficient, because we're just focusing on the looting system. But here we will get an actor of class with tag. Like so. And we make sure to have NPC as the tag here, and we choose the actor class to be third person character in this case. We loop out from this, and we say that all the characters that meet this criteria, we just want to kill them off. So we'll just send a destroy message to them. So destroy actor like so. Now let's see if this works. So we go in here, we play, we run around, we press the R key, the character is dead. Excellent. That functionality is there now. So we can start building on the other things now. So going to our third person character, we may want to have a loot table be something a little bit more modular than just putting it into the character itself. So let's create an actor component actually. We right click, go to blueprint class, and we choose actor component here. We call it bpc underscore and we'll call it loot. Yeah, that's good enough. So now we have this component created. We can go to our third person character, add component, type in bpc, and then loot appears, and we'll just add it like so. Compile and save. Going back to our component now, we open it up. We can remove the tick, we don't want it. Here we're gonna have some code now, and it's going to be fairly simplistic. What we want to make sure to do is we want to keep track of when the character dies. So typing in get owner, we can get the pawn that this component belongs to. From that we can drag out and type on destroyed, and we choose the bind event on destroyed. This means that we have now created a binding to when this character dies we can do something. So we'll drag off from the event here and choose add event, add custom event, and say owner died. It's pretty descriptive. So when this happens we want to spawn our loot. That's when this should happen, right? So to do this we need to actually have a loot table. And since we said we wanted to have specific items for it to choose from, we'll choose to create variables here. We'll choose to call it loot table. We'll make it of the type e underscore loot key, which is how we defined our specific items as. Then we make an array of that, because we may want to have more than one item spawned. We drag this out, like so. And similarly to before, we're going to drag out and choose last index, like so. We're going to get a random range for the integer. We're going to make sure that it hooks up to the max instead of the min. After that, we drag out from the loot table again and we say get. We get a copy or a reference, doesn't really matter. And then we hook them up like so. So now we have theoretically gotten a random item from our loot table that is available. Let's drag it back a little bit more, like so. Okay, with that chosen, what do we do now? Well, we need to communicate with the game mode, right? So we'll right click and type in get game mode. Since we still have the interface, we can make use of that. So we'll drag off here and we'll say spawn item, no, spawn loot. Yes, spawn loot request, like so. And it takes the input of a location, a loot key, and the category like before. So we'll get the destroyed actor, get its actor location. We'll send that in as our parameter for our spawn location. Then we have our item here, right? The loot key. So we'll just send that one in here to be the loot that we want to spawn. The only thing that remains now is actually defining what items to have in the loot table. So we'll mark loot table, make it instance editable. This way we can choose to have a character in the world determine its loot dynamically. So we don't have any items here. We can go out here, we choose this character over here. We can now find its blueprint component, the loot. And we can see that the loot table is exposed here. So we can add items here. So we add a few items. Let's choose a full plate helm, a Excalibur, and chest plate of Valor, for example. We save. And now that should be done. let us now try and debug this and see if it works. So we choose play, we run around, we press the R key, and the character dies, and we can see chosen loot full plate helm. Let's try it again. We kill it off, full plate helm, we try it again, just plate of valor. So you can see it works randomly, and it chooses among the things that it actually had available as its loot, which is full plate helm, Excalibur, and chest plate of valor. Now, if you didn't want to have it like this, you could just change the actor component to instead use these these gameplay tags instead, just like we did before, if you want to have like complete variety among all the items that matches it. But if you want to have a specific loot table, this is a good way to do it. And if you wanted it to have multiple spawns within the same loot table, you would just add a for loop and add as many loot items as you wanted, and that would be it essentially. It's very easy to alter the functionality of this now that it is in place. So how can we build upon this further? Well, one thing that is fairly common in games like MMOs and stuff like that is a rarity system. So let us see how easy it is to expand with rarity to the system then. To start off with, we need to have rarity on the items themselves, which means we have to go to the loot. We have a loot category, we add a new variable, we say that this is the loot rarity. Like so. We make this a gameplay tag, so we can use similar logic like before. Like so. Then we go to our project settings to actually add some gameplay tags. We choose to add them over here, and we can call them rarity.common. We can have a rarity.rare. We can have a rarity.epic. Rarity.legendary. And rarity.artifact, let's say. So I just made up a bunch of different bunch of rarities that we can make use of. So that's all good. So now we can close that one down. Going to our loot table now, you can see that we have the loot rarity available. So if we go to Excalibur, maybe the loot that makes sense for the rarity that makes sense for Excalibur would be artifact, which is the highest one in my opinion here. It's higher than legendary. And then we can go to the chestplate of valor, and maybe that one should also be artifact. We can go to the full plate helm, and maybe this one is supposed to be rare, let's say. And then we go to the mail boots, and this one we can say this one is common. So now we have a bunch of different rarities available. Okay, closing that down, we now go to our game mode, and we need to expand upon our spawning of loot. We need to have another input. We change it to gameplay tag. Make sure that it's not an array like it currently is right here. And we say loot rarity for that one. Like so. We're going to be needing to send this into our determination of loot. So let's go into determine loot and add a parameter here and say that loot rarity should also be taken into consideration. Loot rarity should be something similar to what we have over here with our loot category. So let's actually copy this matches tag over so and make sure that we have our loot rarity going into the first tag and our loot rarity over here going into our second tag. Also make it a little bit cleaner. After that, we should now be able to match rarity as well, but we want to have both of these true. Both the rarity and the category should be matching, so we'll right click. Actually, we'll drag off this boolean and type in and we'll connect both of these and drag it up to the branch instead. So now we'll only add it if both the rarity and the category is matching, and the rest of the logic should be fine. So going back up one level, we now can connect our loot rarity to our determination of loot. And we'll also clean it up a little bit like so. Now we need to go to our interface, because our interface is calling the spawn loot. So we'll go to our interface and we'll add another gameplay tag for that. So we'll say loot rarity. Gameplay tag is already chosen for me, so I'll just compile and save. Go back to our game mode, find our focus on the event for the spawn loot, and then hook up the rarity over here. So now the rarity should be passed in here to spawn loot. The spawn loot is passing it over to determine loot. Determine loot is using it to determine that every row that it's matching is matching it like so. So that's all good and fine. So now how can we make use of this? Well, now you see in our spawn loot interface here now that we have rarity available to us. So if we were to say we wanted to get an equipment, which means that we have all the items available to us, but we choose only legendary, we can now go in here and we can start pressing our spawn loot button. So you can see chosen loot none. So something is broken. So let's check out what that could be. Did I not choose? Okay, I chose it for the category. So that's wrong, of course. I need to have it. The category should be the equipment, and the loot rarity should be legendary in this case. You can see under here when you have chosen what they are chosen as well. So let's try that again. It's good that we had the box so we could see that it immediately went wrong. Spawning now, we can see, okay, it's still going wrong. So let's see what that could be. Okay, so let's put a breakpoint here and see where it actually goes wrong. Adding breakpoint, pressing the key. We're going in here, stepping over, we can see we have a loot rarity of legendary, equipment, everything is fine. We go in here, we have a grouping to choose from. We go in here, we check the data table for all the rows. We check, is this specific row, which is that's not going to be too easy to read, but it's the armor helm. So that one is not legendary. So we'll step over. And it ended up outside. That was not what I thought it would do. Let's resume and start over again. So we press the button again. Step into, step over, step into, and then we'll press step into, and hopefully, yeah, now we can step out. We should be on the second index now on these rows. So this one is the equipment armor boot, which is common, which should also not match legendary. We'll step into and step out again. We're on the third one, which should be our weapon sword, our Excalibur. So this one has... Okay, so that's the problem. I set them as artifact, not as legendary. So everything is working as expected, hopefully then. So let's stop this. Go back to our character, remove the breakpoint, change it from legendary to artifact. So we weren't actually getting any results, and that's why we were spawning that. So we should probably put in some kind of check to make sure that we actually have a valid result. But now you can see we get just Pate of Valor and Excalibur as our possible loot, and then you can see that it spawns out among those two items. Closing that down. So here, if we didn't want to take into consideration what kind of rarity we wanted, we would just put it on rarity. And then we would compile and save. And then if we were to spawn, we would get all of the different items now. So now we have expanded the system to include rarity. We have a loot table, we have a loot system. It's a very simple and easy base to work from, and it is fairly clean thanks to the gameplay tags. Let's just go through shortly how it works again, just to recap everything. With our character, we can press the E key. We'll get the game mode. We will send through a blueprint interface our location and loot information. In our game mode, we take this interface message and we send it to our spawn loot function. Our spawn loot function checks against if we have specified a specific loot. If that is true, we'll go... actually, we do the opposite. We check if we have not defined a specific loot, because this is the one that we have chosen. And if we have not chosen a specific one, we'll go through our loot category and our loot rarity, send it in here. From here we will go through all our data table rows and make sure that only the ones that matches the category tag and the rarity tag are added to our pool. Once we're done with going through the data table, we go through the pool, we write some debug information, and then we choose one of these items by getting a random value between 0 and the last index and just returning it. Having returned that, we return it from this function as well. From this function, we set that variable and choose to spawn it over here using that loot name as an in parameter to the actual object and our actor spawn location. The item itself, which is there, we'll use the loot item key to get the data table row information to get the mesh from there so it looks like it. So that's all the information we currently are getting and putting into the item. You could of course expand upon this further, but that's all we're doing currently. After we have spawned the item, we just type out that we have spawned the item. If we are in the other edge case, or not the edge case, but the other case where we have specified a specific item, we just go to the data table row, and since this is a key, which is that it matches a name key in the data table row, we will just spawn whatever that name is, setting it and spawning it out into the world, and then it goes out. We also added the loot tables, which exist on the third person character in the form of a blueprint component. So going to the blueprint component, it will in the beginning make sure to bind to the death event of a character. So a character that is despawned or destroyed will cause this event to happen. This event instead will then go through whatever is specified as the loot table and spawn that in the world, sending to the game mode. This loot table is instance editable, as you can see over here. And if we check our character over here, which is currently having a loot table defined, we can see that we have specified what we have available. And that is essentially everything that we've created in this loot system. I hope that all of this made sense and you were able to follow along, and this proves valuable to you. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.